Hilchas Sha'ar Avos Hatumos Perek Chamisha Aser. So in the beginning of Perek Yudalad, the Rambam said that there was the Shneim Aser Sveikis, which Tiru Chacham. And the Rambam went through 4 of them in Perek Yudalad, and the other 8, the Rambam is going to go through here in Perek Chamisha Aser. Perek Chamisha Aser, Sofik Divrei Seifrim Ketzah. The 5th was Sofik Divrei Seifrim. Now there's a mitzvah of someone that became Tomei Midrabanan. Became Tomei Midrabanan. Someone that eats Oichlon Tmeim becomes Tomei Midrabanan. Someone Sheisa Mashkin Tmeim becomes Tomei Midrabanan. Someone that was Nafal Reishi Verubi Maim Shuvim, or Shleish Lugim Maim Shuvim fell on him. So all these things are Tumis Midrabanan. So on that, the din is that if there's a suffix about these Tumis, so then he is Toher. So that's this din. Suffix Divrei Seifrim Ketzad. Suffix Achal Eichlon Tmeim V'Shasa Mashkin Tmeim. Suffix Shalei Achal V'Shalei Shasa. That's one eifin. Or suffix Shabar Reishi V'Rubi B'Mayim Shuvim Ishanaflu Shalei Shalugim Mayim Shuvim. Suffix Shalei Ba or Shalei Naflu. So in these cases is Ariza Torah. If it's a suffix, if he became this tumah, is Ariza Torah. V'chein Im Achal Eichlon Tmeim Ishasa Mashkin Tmeim Ba B'Mayim Shuvim Naflu Shalei Shalugim Mayim Shuvim. And now, not the suffix is whether he became Tomei, but rather the suffix is whether he was Metame. And the suffix Noga B'Taris Elu, suffix Le Noga, is again Haritalus as Haritarus Elu Teiris. The Chena Eichel suffix, that's the second scenario. So the first scenario was the suffix is did he eat Eichel Tmeim? In other words, he ate Eichel. We don't know, did he eat Eichel Tmeim or didn't he eat Eichel Tmeim? Was he Bar Reishi V'Rubi Mayim Shuvim? Wasn't he Bar Reishi V'Rubi Mayim Shuvim? That's the first seer. The second seer is he definitely did do this. Those he became Tomei on this midrabbanal level. But the question is whether he was Naga Bataras. Now we have a third seer, V'chein Ha'Eichel Sofik Eichel Tmeim or V'Hasheisa Mashkin Shein Tmeim B'Sofik. You know, he ate something. The first case was we don't know if he ate. Now over here we know he ate, but what he ate was a Sofik Tomei. Was the Sofik was Eichel Tmeim. So the din is Hareza Torah in all 3 tziyurim, whether it's a suffix whether he ate, or he definitely ate, but it's a suffix whether he touched, or there's a suffix he ate something which was a suffix whether it's tummy. In all these cases, it's Hareza Torah. V'chein ha'echel truma tluya is also Torah. So even though normally when a person eats eichel tmeim, he didn't do any yisr. He just ate eichel tmeim. So the din is he's tummy. So we say if there's a suffix if he ate it, so then he's Torah. Now over here, he ate truma, which was a suffix if it was tummy or not. So it really was an isser to eat that truma. There was an isser to eat that truma. So it was like a din toilet. But nevertheless, since sof kol sof, it's not tuma vadois. This truma is not tuma vadois. When a person eats this truma tluya, so he's tummy misafik. And memela, so he has a din Torah. V'chein kol kiyetze be'elu mivlodi tuma shein b'divrei seifrim. These are all dinim derabbanan which are connected to vlodi tumas. Vlodi tumas means because you're eating oichlin tmeim or mashkin tmeim, so you're becoming tummy from a vlad hatuma. Now that is it. When you're becoming tummy from shleish lugim ma'im shuvim, you're becoming a vlad hatuma. So the knetch is not the becoming of vlad hatuma. The knetch is that you're becoming tummy from a vlad hatuma. So in all these cases is sveiken Torah. Aval av tuma, atuma, shehu midivrei seifrim, is sveiki tummy. So no, there are obvious atumas which are a drabonon. L'moshel a goy. A goy midrabonon has a din of an avatuma. He has a din of a zov. Now, so lepel, what happens if there's a suffix whether you touch the zov? So over here l'chur, it's also a suffix drabonon. But since over here the zov is an avatuma, so memele midrabonon he has a din of an avatuma. So therefore it's tummy. That's the din. Avatuma shu midivrei seifrim. If you have an avatuma which is midrabonon, so over here is sveiki tummy. So the din would be both ways. If a person has a suffix whether you touch the goy, so he's sveiki tummy, and al derez if he definitely touched the goy, and the suffix is whether he touched taris, so also there would be sveiki tummy. And the only situation when we say that by an avatuma sveiki tor, there's 2 types of an avatuma midrabonon. There's a mitzias of an avatuma which together of the avatuma is a new din tumah. Marshal, a goy is a zov midrabonon. There's no sveikas involved. A goy is a zov midrabonon. Masha'in kein l'moshel a beisapras. A beisapras has a din is metame, but it's metame mihilchas suffik. In other words, the beisapras be'etzem is a suffik. On a minatera level, the suffik wouldn't be metame, but midrabonon they were metame misufik. So in the din the rabbonon is the pshat is that this suffix we name on l'chumra. That's the pshat of the Beis Apras. So now when you have a suffix, whether you touch the Beis Apras, so over there, that suffix is like a svek sveka. Whereas when you have a Zov, a Goy, so over there, it's not a svek sveka. The Zov is definitely Tommy Midrabanon. Since it's an Ava Tommy Midrabanon, so the din of suffix Divrei Sefer L'Tayr doesn't apply. Masha'inkin, when we're talking about a suffix, if you are Negeh Beis Apras, so over there it is Torah. That's what I'm saying. That an Ava Tommy Shem Divrei Sefer from Sveki Tommy. Elim Kain, Hoyahav Atzmei Tommy B'Suffix. If the whole gather of the tumah of the Av was a tumah b'suffik, against Beis Apras or Eretz Amim, so over there, ain't seif al suffik magoin. If there's a suffik, whether you touch these tumas, which the etzem tumah is a chatchila based on a suffik, so then you ain't seif k'mei shebiyarn. Halacha beis. So that was suffik divrei sefer. That was the fifth. Suffik achulun. What's suffik achulun? Hitaras eichli chuleim betara. What Rambam said before, that people that ate Eichleim B'Tara, so they're called Prushim. And on that we say, Safik HaChulin is Torah Ketzad. Eichlei Chuleim B'Tara, Shenele Lem Safik Tumeh B'Tara Seyim. In other words, let's say you'll have a Messias where a person became, there's a Safik whether or not he became Tomei. And now there's a Safik whether the Taris became Tomei. There's a Safik whether the Taris became Tomei. So the din is harei lo teirim kechol asveikas kulam. Ve'ein lehem tumah elo tumah vadois. This din that a person that's makbid to eat chuleim betara, that's only to be makbid that he shouldn't eat be'efen that is vadi tomei. But in order to be, there's no yisod to be makbid not to eat something which is a suffik tomei. A suffik tomei legabi chulim is not something which is necessary a chumrah. In other words, to eat chuleim betara is a inyan, is a very strong inyan. Because the Amaratzim don't eat their chulin betara. Prushim are makbid, they eat chuleim betara. It's a very strong union to eat chuleim betara. But there's no need to eat chuleim betara be'efim kazed that there shouldn't be a suffik tumah. There's a suffik tumah, as long as there's no vade tumah, so it's perfectly alright to eat chuleim. That was the sixth. Now, halachic gimel, suffik ha-korbanis ketzah. Now, the suffik ha-korbanis is different. Until now, we're talking about a matzav where the shaila is if he became Tomei or didn't become Tomei, and Mamela we say that midrabanan you're not chosh, since it's there's no need to be choshish on the din tumah. That's what we're learning till now. We hear Safik HaKorbanos L'chur is a different type of din, ketzat. Now there's a musik called a mechusi kippurim. We learned before. Mechusi kippurim means someone that, let's say, a yiledes, a zava, which in order for her to eat kachim, it's not enough that she was tevel and that she had zayim nekiyim, she also has to bring a carbon. That's to bring the carbon of the special carbon of mechusi kapara. Now, what happens if there's a suffix if she's mechuyev to bring a carbon or not? There's a suffix if she's mechuyev to bring a carbon or not. So the din is in order to have the kapara, she has to have the carbon. And that's a special din that she could bring this carbon, since it's a carbon ha'ef, it's a chatos ha'ef, habo ala suffix, so she could bring this carbon even ala suffix. So that's a chidush that someone that's, let's say, a suffix zova, suffix yiledes, could bring a chatos ha'ef ala suffix, because in order to be matayr herself, in order to be able to eat kachim. Now what happens if there's a suffix, whether she's mechuyev in 5 chatois ha'ef, or she's mechuyev in 5 karbonis of chatois ha'ef, because she was a suffix of she was 5 times a zova, or there's a suffix maybe she was 5 times a yiledes. So in order to matayr herself, she only needs one. She doesn't need more than one. And once she brings one carbon, she's already tater. Let's learn inside. Safik ha-korbanos ketzad, mechusik kippurim, sheyesh olav safik chamish korbanos. There's a suffix maybe that this mechusik kippurim is chayav chamish korbanos, kigain, ha'isha, sheyesh olav safik chamish zivis. There was 5 situations where she may have been a zava, which was mechayav her a carbon. Oy safik chamish leidus. So there were 5 incidents, which each of those incidents she could have been a yiledus. Memela, there's a suffix, maybe she's mechuyev to bring 5 karbonis for leidus. So what's the din? So the pill right now, since there's a suffix, whether she's a zava or yiledus, so she can't eat kachim. So in order for her to eat kachim is maybe carbon echad. So she brings one carbon, either the carbon leida if she's a suffix yiledus, or carbon for the zava if she's a suffix zava, and v'tor lekel bekachim, and from now on she's tor lekel bekachim. Ve'ein hashar olav cheven, she's not mechuyev to bring the others. Even though there's a Savi, maybe she's Mechuyev, but Lepel, she doesn't have to bring carbon. In other words, the whole din that she brings a carbon is in order to be matter her to eat Bekochim. But over here, she's already mutter to eat Bekochim by bringing one. So Memela, she doesn't have to bring the other. Ein Hashar Olav Chayva, she doesn't have to bring the other. It's not so clear what is the connection between this case and the din of the Suffolk Tumas Shetira Chachamim. Whereas Lamoshel, what happens if a woman was 100% 5 Yeledis? She was a Yeledis 5 times, and she's 100% Mechuyev in 5 Korbanos. But Lepel, if she'll bring 1 carbon now, she'll immediately be mutter to eat Kachim. In other words, the fact that she's mutter to eat Kachim is a din, even if she was a Vada Yeledis. It's not pshat because she was a Suffolk, that's why she's not Mechuyev. L'chura, even if she was a Vada Yeledis 5 times, and she goes ahead and brings 1 carbon, she's mutter to eat Bekachim. So this din that she becomes mutter to eat Bekachim after 1 has nothing to do with the din Suffolk. Now there's another din that since there's only a Suffolk whether she's Mechuyev, so b'negeh to be matter her in Kachim, she should bring a carbon even for a Suffolk. But Lepel, since the other 4 shall be mutter Bekachim without bringing the other 4, so ein Hashar Olav Chayva. So l'chur, it's 2 separate dinim. There's one din in Hilchis. A woman is not allowed to eat Kachim if she's a Mechusik Kapara. If she's the same Mechusik Kapara 5 times, and she brings 1 carbon, so she's already allowed to eat Kachim. But on the other hand, she's a Mechusik Kapara, she's Mechuyev to bring a carbon. She has a Chiyuv to bring a carbon because a carbon you let is Mechuyev to bring a carbon. Now, Lepel, if there's a suffix whether she's Mechuyev in that carbon, so she only brings the 1 carbon, which is going to be matter to eat Bekachim, and she doesn't have to bring the other ones. So l'chura, that's like, it's not a din of Tara, that's 2 separate dinim. One din is that she's only mechuyev to bring 1 because that's her chiyuv, in order to become Torah. And lepel, the fact that she's not Tomei after she brought 1 is not a din mitzad the suffix, that's a din even if it would be a vadei. And that the fact that she doesn't have to bring more is a din in Hilchas Korban, it's not a din in Hilchas Tumah V'Tara. So how does that fit into this din of sveikis which tir chacham? But I'm saying there's yud beis sveikis shetir chacham. It's not so clear how is this yud beis sveikis shetir chacham. The Ramar talks about it. He talks about it and he brings pshat. Don't understand exactly what he answers. Halacha dalet sofik negoim ketzad. Actually nizkak letuma sveiki tork mishabiyarno beperisheni milchus negoim. So over there we were learning that there's Metzias where 2 people came to a kohen. One had a Beheres Kigris, and the other one had a Beheres Kisela. And that was at the beginning of the first week. And so he was Masger both of them, and now he comes at the end of the second week, and he sees both of them have Kisela. So he knows one of them was definitely Pasa, one of them started Kigris, and now he's Kisela. So the question is which one? So since he doesn't know which one, so therefore he can't be Matami them. That's one oifen. And the chiddush is even if you have the same person, Moshe, you have one person that has 2 negoim, one nega which was kesel and one was kegris, and then at the end of the second week, he sees that both of them are kesela. So he knows definitely that the one that was originally kegris is now kesela, but he doesn't know which was the nega that was originally kegris and which one was the originally kesela. So therefore also the din is you can't be matami. You can't be matami unless you know that this is the nega that was pasa. So that's this din. That's the din of sofik negoim. Actually, niskal gutuma. If he was already tomei, then the question is if he became uis tomei. So over there he remains tomei unless he's vade uis tomei, like the Rambam speaks about over there. Nehilchas negatzoras. Masha'inkin over here, when with the sofik, if he became ever muklit, so in order to become a mukhlit, it has to be a be'efa that you know how he became a mukhlit. It's a chiddush. You know, it's not only you have to know that he became a mukhlit, you have to know with which nega he became a mukhlit. Actually, niskek l'tumas feiki turk mishabiyanu beperik shishi mehilchas negoim. Halacha hey, sofik oimed ve'ever ketzad. Na mitzayre the din mitzayre sheyeshav tachas ha'ilon and v'hator over, and the Torah is going by. So the din is when a mitzayre is sitting under a tree, and someone else and a Torah goes by under the tree, so he becomes tummy. Because makim the moishav of the mitzayre is tummy, and since the mitzayre is sitting under the tree, so his mishavi is tummy. Now sofik hel olav ilon v'tummy, sofik lehel olav. Over here there's a sofik whether or not this person actually stood under this tree. Whereas the Mitzera was definitely under the tree, and the Mokim under the tree was definitely Tomei, but there's a suffix whether the Torah came under this tree. That's one suffix. V'chein could be the other way. V'cheinim hoya Torah yeshiv tachos elam. The Torah was definitely under the tree, and v'hamitzera ever tachtov, and the Mitzera is passing under this tree. Now the din is for the Mitzera to metame under the tree is only if the Mitzera is standing. If it has to be Meishavi, it has to be he's standing over there like Beifing Shel Kviyas. Mashenkin, the fact that the Mitzera is passing under the tree is not going to cause that what's under the tree should be tummy. So over here, this person, this Torah was Yoshev Tachos Ilan. It's not the Ger really Yoshev, he could be over as well. And V'ha-Mitzera over Tachtov. And Sofik Ahmed HaMitzera V'nitma HaTorah, Sofik Le Ahmed. The Sofik is whether the Mitzera was Ahmed. So either way, Sveik Torah. So B'kitzur, the din is that when we're dealing with the din of becoming Tomei, being in the Moshev of the Mitzera, so the suffix, such a suffix is Torah. So it's a suffix whether the person was under the tree or whether the Mitzera was standing under the tree. So either way is Sveiki Torah. That's this din of suffix Emed Ve'ever. Halacha Vav, suffix Shrotzim, ze suffix Anizrokim. So he called it before suffix Shrotzim. Now he touches up that it means suffix Anizrokim. It's a suffix about things that are thrown. Ketzad, Zorak Sheretz, or Lav Davka Sheretz, Idover Tomei, Lebein HaKikris. So he threw something which was Tomei, and it was Lebein HaKikris, and the shaila is whether it touched the Kikris and made him Tomei. Fakesh, Zorak Kikr Lebein HaTmeis. There were things that were Tomei, and he threw a Kikr Lebein HaTmeis. And the suffix Noga, suffix Le Noga. It's a suffix whether the Tumah touched the Tara, or the Tara touched the Tumah. And it happened that you threw it. Is the din is hareza Torah, so it's Torah. Why? Hey lemotza kikar Torah she'ein negeh betuma. Right now, the matzav is that the kikar Torah is not negeh betuma. So therefore, we're not choishes shekol Hatumos kishas mitziyosim. The tumas we look at it kishas mitziyosim and name him shema nogabei v'achar kach nafel b'tzidei. We're not going to say maybe it did touch and then it fell. Since right now we don't see it touching, and before it was in the matzav of Zrika, as we'll soon see Behemshech. So in Mela, since it was in a matzav of Zrika, and right now we don't see them touching, so therefore it's Torah. Now let's learn Behemshech. Hasheretz b'fi achulda. You have a sheretz that's in the mouth of a chulda, of a weasel. Now the weasel is a live weasel, and in the weasel bechlal is not matame. A chulda is not matame. So, and the sheretz is matame. A sheretz, when it's dead, it's matame. Hasheretz b'fi achulda, umhaleches al gabi kikri shel truma. And suffix noga, suffix le noga. There's a suffix whether or not the sheretz was noga in the kikris. So the din is sveiki Torah. Why? Mipnei sheli nocha tumah, because the tumah wasn't nocha. Because since it was walking, this chulda was walking with the sheretz, and there's a suffix whether the sheretz touched the kikris. So Mimela, so since it's le nocha tumah, so therefore it has a din like tumah, like we learned before. There was tzaf al gabi mayim. We had a sheretz which was tzaf al gabi mayim, so it also didn't have like a steadfast place. So mainly it becomes tummy. Even though earlier we learned that if the sheretz is lying on a keli and the keli is tzaf al gabi mayim, so then it doesn't have a din of tumah tzaf al gabi mayim. And over there was tummy. So l'chur over here also the sheretz is the b'fi achulda. So nevertheless, l'chur you should say that it doesn't have a din of sheretz tzaf al pni mayim. So that they bring from Achreinim that the pshat is that over here, since lepel is b'fi achulda, and it's really it's not really so accessible, and the chulda is going to eat it or could eat it, and you can't really get it out of his mouth. So memela, that's not considered al derev that it was munach b'keli where it's munach. So that's a svara. But I'll call upon him. That's the din. The din is clearly that a sheretz b'fi achulda, and the chulda is walking al gabe hakikres, and we don't know for sure that the sheretz touched it. So the din is that since it's leinocha hatuma, so which is similar to the idea of tzaf al gabi amayim, so memela sveiki Torah. Now hoyse mahaleches bei lepel the chulda was walking with the sheretz and v'nigaz bekikres, and it was definitely touching the kikres. However, sofik chai, sofik mes, we don't know if the sheretz was a chai, and when it's a chai, it's not matami, or sofik mes, we don't know whether or not it was a mess. So the din is again arein teres. Over here it's again we don't really know that there was a davar matami. In the case before, we knew there was a davar matami. We just didn't know if it was matami. Over here, we don't even know if there was a davar matami. Since we don't know it was a davar matami, so we made arein teres. Now, b'medvar mamurim b'zman shenot losiv holchalon. And as we saw, this chulda with this sheretz b'piyah, and it was walking on top of kikres, and it was touching the kikres, but we don't know whether the sheretz was alive or was not alive. However, if later on you see that the sheretz is mess in the piyah chulda, so you saw the chulda walking with the sheretz and touching the kikres, and then later on you saw the sheretz mess b'piyah, but you don't know when it was mess. Was it mess earlier, and memela, so it was matame the kikres, or it was mess later? So the din is arei lutmeis. So then it's arei lutmeis, because since lepel we see that it was mess, so memela we know that it was mess earlier before also. Now that b'medvar mamurim, if we never saw it chai, in other words, we didn't say it chai, so it could be the chuldim el took the sheretz when it was mess. However, ru'u chai b'piyah, we originally saw that the sheretz in b'piyah chulda was chai. And then later on, we saw this chulda taking the sheretz and walking on top of the kikres and being negel with the sheretz, the kikres. There's afal pi shematzu mes b'piyah. Right now, we see that the sheretz was mess. Is harei luteris. We say that the kikres are teres, because since originally there was chai, so even though right now it's mess, we go basa chazaka the yikara, and the chazaka the yikara, there was chai. That was a chai. So that's this din. Is nachamal. So we're having a din over here where we have a sheretz b'fei chulda. So there could be different tziyurim. One tziyur was that we don't know if the sheretz b'chlal touched the chulda, touched the kikres. So that was the original din, that it's tar. We don't even know if it would touch the kikres. And then there's a tziyur where we don't know if the sheretz was chai or mess. So as I say, if we don't see the sheretz, we never saw the sheretz, we saw the chulda with the sheretz, we don't know if it was chai or mess, so then we assume that it's tar. We assume it's tar because we don't know that it was mess. Now if we find it mess and we never saw it chai, so then we nemon that it's mess. Masha'enkin, if we originally saw it chai, and later on we see it mess, so then we go basi the original and we say that it's tar. So either way, so in other words, if you never saw it, it's tar. If you never saw it, it's tar because you don't know that it was mess. If later on you saw it that it was mess, so for sure then it's tamei. Masha'enkin, if originally you saw it tar, chai, and then you saw it mess, so it's also tar. V'chein hasheretz b'fi achulda or v'hanavela b'pi akevela, both the same din. Now v'avru ben ha-tehirim, and they pass by the tehirim, esha avru tehirim b'neim, is also the same din, the sveiki tar. Why? Mipnei she'ein l'tumah mokim kavua. Because the nekudas advarim is the tumah didn't have a mokim kavua. So if you have a place where the tumah is, and you have a place where the tara is, and the question is if the tumah and the tara got together, so that's one din. But over here, the tumah didn't have a mokim kavua, because the sheretz was b'fi achulda, or the nevela was b'fi akelev. So memela ein l'tumah mokim kavua, and therefore it's considered sveiki tar, which is similar to the din of we learned before when tzofah pnei hamayim. Now the ma'aser by tzofah pnei hamayim, it was a din of sheretz. The chura wasn't a din of nevela. Over here, the Rambam is clearly saying nevela b'fi akela. So we mentioned the Reb Chaim nemzon in bepashtos that this din of the tzofah pnei hamayim was only a sheretz. Memela, the question is, ay lechura over here. It also says a nevela pnei akelev. So you have to explain that over here, the nevela b'fi akelev is even worse than tzofah pnei hamayim, because since it's b'fi akelev and it's not accessible, so memela, so therefore it's worse than a matziv of sheretz tzofah pnei hamayim. Not everybody learns that. It's not so 100% clear. But I'll call upon the nekudas advarim is that when you don't have a mokum kavua for the tumah, so therefore it's not matami. So that was the din of the sheretz tzofah pnei hamayim, and now we're learning also b'fi achulda and al derezeh the nevela b'fi akela. The question is only over here it says nevelas. That's what you mentioned over here. But the nekudas advarim is that since it's ein tumah mokum kavua, so therefore the Chazal said that sveiki is tar. Now hoyim manakrim behem alaretz, and it was lying on the ground, and they were manakrim. And the question is, while they were like they were picking at it, and while they're picking at it, it was moving. So the question is it considered as a suffix whether or not it was metame? So the din is harein kumunachim umetame l'mafrei misafik, and then they are metame l'mafrei misafik. In other words, from when they started being menakrim, so there's a suffix whether or not it touched taris. So then metamel mafrem misafik imay b'rishus hayochid kimei she is bar, because b'rishus harab anyways there's another din, but b'rishus harab misfeikitor. The Lashon Metamel Mafrei Misafik, and these are a little explanation. Knows the point is that since they're being menakrim on it, so it's even though they're being menakrim, but since it's munach al haaretz, so Memela from when it's munach al haaretz, it's considered a mokim kavua, and if there's a suffix, whether it came into contact with taris from then onwards, so it's tummy. Even though in the interim it was menakrim and it was moving. Halacha ches, Sofik Rishus Harabim Ketzad, one of the Sveikis, Sofik Rishus Harabim, Sveiki Tor Ketzad, Tumah Shemunachas Rishus Harabim, Sofik Noga Bo, Sofik Lei Noga, so the din is Sveiki Tor. Now, Haisa Rishus HaYachid, V'Sofik Noga Bo, Sofik Lei Noga Bo, Sveiki Tomi. So that's the din, the same exact item, the same exact Sofik. If it was Rishus Harabim, it's Sveiki Tor, if it's Rishus HaYachid, it's Sveiki Tomi. Now, V'chol Elo HaSveikis, Shetiru Chacham, Afilu Rishus HaYachid, Mipnei she'ein b'em das lishol k'mei she'yizbar. The lashon over here is a little bit shver. It sounds the v'chol eila sveikas shtir chacham sounds like the sveikas that the Rambam spoke about till now. But l'chura, the sveikas the Rambam spoke about till now, l'chura, you can't say that the reason is because ein b'em das lishol. There are certain things over there. K'min asafik above ma'im shuvim over there. The yesh b'em das lishol. So the pastors it means like this: that later on in Perek Tezayin we're going to learn that there are be'amas safik tumah b'shus hayachid sveiki tami and safik tumah b'shus harabim sveiki tor. However, in safik tumah b'shus hayachid, the sveiki tami is only in a tzir where the one that's becoming tami is yesh beidas lihishol. There's yesh lihishol, as he could ask him whether or not he's tami or tor, and he could answer. And only b'chia gavna we say that safik tumah b'shus hayachid sveiki tami. Which is dugma of a seita, which we'll learn behemshach. Masha'inkin in a case where it's ein beim das l'shol, l'moshel we're talking about a chereshet of a cotton or an item which neshach is to ask the item. So memela over there we say even the rishus hayachid is sveikei toher. Now is this a hagabol in the din of safik tuma rishus hayachid sveikei tomer. So that's what the Rambam is saying here. B'chol elu asveikei shatira chacham, which the Rambam is really going to talk about later on in Perek Tezayin. Afilu b'shus hayachid v'chol elu asveikas shetiru chacham afilu b'shus hayachid just like Koch we just now said that sofik tum b'shus hayachid sveiki tami. So the answer is mepnei she'im mem das lishol k'mei she'yizbar, because over there, because this din that sofik tum b'shus hayachid sveiki tami is only b'chiyah gavna that's yesh b'das lishol. Yeah. Halacha tes sofik shtei reshuyas ketzad. So sofik about shtei reshuyas. So now we just learned this is like another prat in the din of Safik Tumah Rishus Harabim Sveiki Tor. As we learn Safik Tumah Rishus Hayachid Sveiki Tomi. Safik Tumah Rishus Harabim Sveiki Tor. What happens if there's a suffix if you became Tomi and you're not really sure if you were in the Rishus Harabim or in the Rishus Hayachid? And that's gufa suffix. So when you're for sure in the Rishus Hayachid, the question is if you became Tomi in the Rishus Hayachid, so then we say Sveiki Tomi. Masha'inkin, if there's a suffix where you were, so then then we don't say Sveiki Tor. That's this din. This din of Safik Tum Rishus Hayachid Sveiki Tome is only if we establish that you were definitely in Rishus Hayachid. Halacha test. Safik Shtei Rishuyas Ketzad. Hayi Dover Tome Rishus Hayachid. V'Dover Tor Rishus Harabim. That's the fact. There was a Dover Tor Rishus Hayachid, Dover Tor Rishus Harabim, Hadover Lepach, and or Fakert. There was a Dover Tome Rishus Harabim, and there was a Dover Tor Rishus Hayachid. And v'naga be'echad mem, and you definitely touched one of them. Ve'en yodur be'ez mem naga. You don't know if you touched the one in Rishus Hayachid or touched the one in Rishus Harabim. And if you touch the one, and if you'll know which one you touched, you'll know if you're a tummy or not, but you don't know which one you touched. Oy shehesed es echad mem, ve'en yodur eze hesed, im hoy hadover hatami, metame b'masa. Now something which is metame b'masa is also metame if you move it. So you moved one of them, you know one of them is tummy, you moved one of them, you don't know which one you moved. And it could have been in the one of the Rishus Hayachid or the one in Rishus Harabim. Oisha yechad mem metami be'el behel al echad mem ve'en yedu eze mem hel. So the din over here is Areza Tor. Why? Because avalpi. Why? Because lepel we don't. You're not in Rishus Hayachid. Because this din of Safik Tum Rishus Hayachid Sveiki Tome is only if you're in Rishus Hayachid. There's a Tumah Rishus Hayachid, and the question is if you came into contact with this Tumah. But over here there's a tumah, and you're in Rishus Hayachid maybe, and you maybe touched something in Rishus Harabim. So b'kitzer, we're not really sure where you contacted tumah, whether you contacted tumah, and if you contacted tumah, where you contacted the tumah. So memela, so be'efun kazeh, we don't say Safik Tumah Rishus Hayachid Sveiki Tumah. Then the Rambam continues, Aval pi shesafik Rishus Harabim Tor, Aber ksheyavi lishel emle im tavalta em bekach hefset. Knows you take a Torah, but you're not going to lose anything if you'll be tevel. Is im tovel or is im meshubach? Lepel being tevel is meshubach. V'im lei tovel v'asa taris is a teirish. Shavik shuzarabim Torah. The din is shavik shuzarabim Torah, but it doesn't mean that there's no inyan to go ahead and be tevel. It's better to go ahead and be tevel, and mainly you won't have to come on to the din of shavik tumur shuzarabim sveiki Torah. Halacha yud. Sheretz shenimtza soruf umunach al gabi eichlin. You have a sheretz which right now it's completely burnt, and right now it's not in a matzav that it can give out tumah. Since it's completely burnt, it can give out tumah. But the pale, we don't know. Maybe the sheretz was a mess before it was completely burnt, and it was on top of the echlin. V'chein talis shenimtzaz beluya. The talis is already completely threadbare. Memela became uis din talis, and Memela, even though the talis was once mekabel tumah, it was tummy. The talis was tummy, but now it's beluya. Umachat shenimtzaz shvura echaluda bein hakelim. So you have a machat which is broken and rusty and bekitzer, so it doesn't have a din hakelim. So the question is this sheretz being metame the eichlin? Is this talis being metame, or is this machat being metame? The question is, in the matzav that it is now, it can be matame. But the question is, maybe it was matame, and we know that it was tummy. We know that it was tummy. So the din is, but lepel right now you find that in this matzav that it can be matame. So the din is harei l'teilim. So then it's tar bein b'shus harab bein b'shus hayochid. Whether it's b'shus harab bein b'shus hayochid, ve'ein neimrim shema achar shenoga be'echel nisraf, or va'achar shenitmu akel b'maga atalis v'amachat is nishbra hechlita ubos atalis achetara. In other words, maybe we see right now that there's a burnt sheretz on echlin, so it's possible that first the sheretz was a sheretz mess, and it was on top of echlin, it was matamit, and then it got burnt. We see now that there's a talis which was tummy, and now it's a talis bluya, and it's touching other things. So the question is, maybe before it became bluya, it started touching other things, and it was matami. We know it was tummy. And al derev zeh b'negei machat, which is now rusty, and it's now doesn't have a din machat. We say, yeah, we know that it was once tummy, but lepel, we found it in a matzav that right now it can be matami. So we don't really have a basis to a yisod, a clear yisod that it was tummy. So that's why it's kishas ha-metzia. Shekol Hatumos is always kishas mitziyos. So that's a rule. The rule is that when you find something which lepel right now in the itztika matzav, it's not matami. It can't be matami. Elamai, there's a svara that maybe it was matami before it came into this matzav. Like we had before, when you had the kikar and you had the dover tummy. Right now they're not touching each other, but maybe they touch each other. We say no, it's kishas mitziyosim. Right now they're not touching each other. We assume that they're right now it's a matzav of tor. So Aldera is over here. Right now it's in a matzav of tor. So may let's tor. Halacha Yudalev. Shnei edim le nitma. V'hu emer toirani. And perhaps he's not believed keneged edim, but nevertheless, hu nemena yideyatzme. He's nemena yideyatzme. Because we explained, we translate his words that it means that when I'm saying Torah, I don't mean to say that I never became Tommy. I mean to say Tovalti. But Avos became Aseg Betaris. We don't tell him Aseg Betaris. You saying Tovalti, you're saying your Torah and Beseda. Because Lepel, since there's Adam saying that he was Tommy, and he's not saying clearly that Tovalti, so therefore we don't tell him Aseg Betaris. But on the other end, Elim Osataris, Arian Teres, Lepel, if he was Osataris, and he's tiny that he was Torah, so it's Teres. And V'yochish La'atzmi, that's not so clear what's the V'yochish La'atzmi. L'chura, he's tiny that he knows he's Torah, and we're saying the Pshat is that it means that Tovalti. So what's this V'yochish La'atzmi? So others bring that the Pshat is that, in other words, he has to worry because Lepel, people are going to see it, and Adam said that it was Nitma. He said Le Nitmesi. He's saying Torah, which sounds like Le Nitmesi. So Memela, the best thing would be for him to be Tevel, and Memela to take away any chash of anyone being clearing about the taras that he does. But I'll call upon him, the din is, it's not so clear, but the din is that he's Naaman when he says Torani, even though he didn't say clearly Tovalti, we say that Pshat is Tovalti, we don't tell him Aseg Betaris, but Lepel, if he was Aseg Betaris, we name on that it's Torah. Now, Eidachod Eimer Nitma, Shnai Mem Le Nitma, Ben Rishus Harab, Ben Rishus Hayochid is Torah. That's L'chura Pashut. Shnai Mem Nitma, Ve'eid Eimer Le Nitma, bein b'shus hayochid, bein b'shus harabim, harei ze nitma, which is again l'chura pasha. We always go b'asa shnayim. Now, eid eimer nitma ve'eid eimer le nitma, or ishe imeres nitma ve'ishe imeres le nitma. So he has a suffix. So remember, b'shus hayochid he's tummy because the suffix tum b'shus hayochid is sveiki tummy, and b'shus harabim we say sveiki tor.